Let me ask you something. If you walked into a vegan restaurant and they started the pitch with, "We've got the best steak in town," would you believe anything they said after that? That is how the Chinese Communist Party sells itself to the world. Instead of proudly saying, "Yes, we have no freedom of speech, no human rights, and no democracy, and we think that is better for us," they keep insisting, "Oh no, we have freedom of speech too. And our president is also elected, just, with Chinese characteristics." It's like North Korea claiming they have Disneyland. Everyone knows you're lying. And if you start with a lie, nothing else you say matters. Case in point, CCP insider and apologist Victor Gao on Al Jazeera, sitting across from Mehdi Hasan. Hasan asks him about freedom of speech. Now, here's Gao's golden opportunity. Own it. Say, "We don't have American-style free speech, and we don't want it. We still get things done." But nope, he takes the worst possible route. He tries to convince a global audience that actually China does have freedom of speech. When a member of the audience then asked him for a demonstration to criticize Xi Jinping, he couldn't do it. And here's the actual exchange.
My question is, as a dissident from Hong Kong, knowing that I cannot express freely in Hong Kong or in the UK without risking other people in trouble, I also know that you just now made claims about there's free speech in China, and it's possible to criticize the Chinese government just now again. Can you please demonstrate that free speech and tell us what are Xi Jinping's two worst mistakes in the past 5 years?
Great question.
If you can demonstrate to us that it's okay to criticize Xi Jinping, the Chinese government, and China, or even just say Xi Jinping kind of resembles Winnie the Pooh, would be good enough for me. Thank you.
Victor, do you want to take that question?
Well, thank you. I would say China need to make more take more prompt actions in dealing with the dramatic aging population in China and the dramatic demographic decline.
Do you think Xi Jinping's to blame for not being fast enough on aging?
No, I think the whole Chinese government, including the Central Committee, State Council, local government, need to take actions quickly to reverse that dramatic aging population problem and demographic decline.
We're not going to get a criticism out of you. Let's go back to the audience.
What this Chinese official is essentially saying is, "Please believe me while I redefine the words in your dictionary." Now, let's talk about why this defense instantly fails. When you tell an audience that values free speech that you have it too, they will judge you by their standards, not yours. So the moment they Google "Chinese journalist jailed" or "Chinese censorship," you're done. One Google search and the entire pitch collapses. It's like claiming you can fly. The audience's first instinct will be to test you, not trust you. And another flaw with Victor Gao's defense is that it exposes his lack of institutional and cultural confidence. If the CCP truly believed its system works better without Western-style free speech, they would own it. They would say, "Yeah, we censor stuff, and Chinese people are not allowed to criticize their leader. We think it keeps stability. Our GDP still grew. Deal with it." If CCP has that honesty, then at least that would be a bold, internally consistent position. People might still disagree, but at least it's honest. And honesty, even in authoritarianism, commands a weird kind of respect. But instead, they borrow Western or universal values like freedom, openness, democracy, and equality, and try to staple them onto an authoritarian model. That is not confidence. That is insecurity just as diplomacy. This is why China constantly has to twist the meaning of universally understood concepts just to claim they have them too. Freedom of speech, in China, it means you can say anything as long as it doesn't cross an invisible red line that can get you censored or arrested. Democracy? Let's slap the label whole process people's democracy on one party rule where the public never votes for the top leader. And the most absurd example? The party congress election, where Xi Jinping gets elected with 100% of the vote. Nobody dares to vote against him because it's career suicide. Yet they still hold the ritual, still wave the ballots, still pretends it's democracy. That's not democracy. That is cosplay for propaganda photos. And that is why China's propaganda fails globally. Here's the thing. Propaganda works best when it's internally consistent. The Soviet Union during the Cold War, they didn't pretend they had American freedoms. They sold communism as morally superior to capitalism. And the CCP today, they want the perks of saying we're just like you without actually being like you. And that is why no one buys it, because it's logically impossible. And they end up in this no man's land where they alienate domestic hardliners by leaning in on universal values, and they alienate foreigners by lying about realities they can fact check in 10 seconds. Whenever CCP spokespeople go abroad, they can't help but sprinkle in words like freedom, fights, justice, because they know those words test well in a global marketplace of ideas. But here's the problem. Those words come with baggage. In the West, freedom of speech means you can criticize the president without disappearing. In China, freedom of speech means you can say whatever you want as long as in line with the party's interests. That is not a different flavor of freedom. That is not freedom. That is PR lipstick on a ugly pig. I lived in China. I've seen people lower their voices in cafes, before saying anything mildly political. I've seen entire news articles vanish overnight. So when a CCP mouthpiece goes on TV and says, we have freedom of speech, I don't just see a liar. I see someone forced to lie because telling the truth will get them in jail. And that is the saddest part. They are not selling the system or telling the China story. They are surviving it. And here's the irony. If the CCP actually wanted to impress the world, they would drop the freedom talk entirely and flip the script. Picture this. A CCP spokesperson walks onto a stage and says, yes, we censor. Yes, we control the media. Yes, we disappear any Chinese citizen who dares to criticize our leader. And guess what? Our trains run on time. Our skyscrapers go up in months. And lots of people in the West still thinks we're rising fast. You call it oppression? We call it efficiency. Now, if they do that, the audience would gasp not because they agree, but because at least it is a clear, confident argument. If they did that, the debate would shift from, are you lying? To, is authoritarianism actually more effective? But they never do it, because deep down they know the answer might still be no. And that is the core insecurity. If you don't sincerely believe your own system can win a fair debate, you have to pretend it is the same as the other guy's system. The CCP's soft power and propaganda problem isn't just that, the rest of the world disagrees with them. It is that they don't even believe their own propaganda enough to sell it straight. If you're going to run an authoritarian system, own it, admit it. Say you don't have freedom of speech. Admit that you don't respect human rights. Admit that you think, that is better. And make your case. That would at least be a decent argument. But trying to convince the world that your censorship is freedom and your sham elections are democracy, that's how you end up with no credibility, no trust, and no soft power. Just a government shouting into an empty echo chamber while the rest of the world just rolls their eyes.